Welcome to the Find Your Best Future podcast. This is the podcast that helps international families make great decisions when it comes to choosing university courses. So welcome, Meghan. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Meghan Thompson, and I'm a student recruitment officer at the University of Victoria. But not too long ago, I also completed my studies here at U Vic. I graduated with my undergraduate degree in history and writing in 2017. I'm originally from Edmonton, Alberta, and I relocated to Victoria to study at U Vic right out of high school. I've been working in student recruitment for about 5 years now, and it really is so fulfilling getting to help students find their way to a post-secondary institution that's a good fit for them. I think in the end, it really should be all about finding the school that aligns best with your goals and your values and your interests.
Fantastic. Give us a quick introduction to your university, Meghan.
Yeah, the University of Victoria is located on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen peoples, whose historic relationships continue with the land to this day. We are a medium-sized, comprehensive Canadian university. Comprehensive university, meaning that we have a huge variety of programs, anything from engineering, business, science, as well as humanities, social sciences, fine arts, education, human development. With about 22,000 students, we're considered, like I said, medium-sized. We offer all the opportunities of a large university, like research and international experiences, real-world work opportunities, but we still have a community that you might see on a bit of a smaller campus. One thing that is really unique about U Vic is we're a destination university. So that means that about 80% of our students, or 78%, are actually not local to Victoria.
Right.
So it makes it really easy to engage with campus life and meet people and become part of the community.
And what do you love most about the university? You obviously love it. I can hear it in your voice.
I do. And it's really hard to choose just one thing. But I really do love that I think U Vic cares about important issues. And this extends to our students and to our staff and faculty. You can see this reflected in the research that's happening on campus, whether it's humanities researchers that are revitalizing Indigenous languages or researchers with Ocean Networks Canada trafficking, data on our oceans to mitigate climate change. We're actually the number 2 university in the whole world for climate action. This was ranked by Times Higher Education. So our planet is extremely important to us, as well as, other areas of activism and political issues like human rights and, global poverty and all of those kinds of issues. So whatever you're passionate about, you can really make a positive change as a U Vic student.
First up, let's talk a little bit about the university's physical location and the area around it. Could you tell us about where University of Victoria is located and a bit about where you are?
We're located in the charming coastal city of Victoria, British Columbia. So we're on the tip of an island surrounded by phenomenal beaches, mountains, and old-growth rainforest. I think it's one of the most picturesque places in all of Canada. The campus itself has about 200 acres of green space, so we're built to look and feel like a park with lots of grass and trees rather than concrete and skyscrapers. You'll also see lots of deer frolicking across the campus. And while we're, a nature lover's paradise, we're still conveniently located in the city of Victoria. It's about a 20-minute bus ride from the U Vic campus into the downtown Inner Harbor, where students can find restaurants, cafes, shops. We're also the brunch capital of Canada.
You certainly are.
So if
I know it well.
waterfront as much as I do, you can
Sure.
find great options on all
So
corners.
let's, yeah, as you mentioned, the university's got a pretty unique location, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because you are, deeply in nature, but you're also, as you said, close to Victoria, and that does offer a really a special mix. Um, Talk a little bit about transport connections. Obviously, within Victoria, you're well connected, but flying in and flying out for international students, how does that go?
Yeah, so there's an international airport in Victoria, so students can take international flights to Victoria. There's the closest, I would say, international flight is about 30 minutes from Victoria to Seattle. We're also, very accessible by bus in all corners of the city. More than 1,000 buses leave the U Vic campus every single day, so you can get downtown, you can get to the airport, you can get to the different ferry locations if you want to take a boat to other, parts of the mainland. So we are on Vancouver Island, but it's a really big island, so really accessible.
Yeah, it's not really an island, is it? I mean, when you say Vancouver Island, for the rest of the world, people think of an island being, I don't know, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers across, but Vancouver Island is big, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually the size of Ireland, I believe, in terms of
Yes,
land mass.
easily. It's as long as the United Kingdom, I think.
Yeah.
It's huge and is a really diverse place. Vancouver is obviously the big city nearby, and transport between Victoria and Vancouver. How does that work?
Yeah, so there's direct flights. I think it's like a 12-minute flight, or there's the ferry system. So British Columbia Ferries goes back and forth between Vancouver and Victoria, often hourly, or sometimes in the off season every 2 hours. So It's very easy to go back and forth. You can drive a car onto the ferry, so you don't have to walk on. You can bring your car over, drive your car back. So very easy to get between.
So although it's an island, you're pretty well connected, I think, is the important message. Although looks like you're on the end of that island, it's pretty easy to get around. I think one thing that people perhaps need to know is that Canada is very, very big. Yeah? And on the map, it might look that it's quite small, but in reality, journey times are generally longer than they are, say, in Europe. And so any international student heading your way needs to understand that, I guess, a little bit. What about the weather?
Yeah, Victoria's weather is incredibly mild for Canada. I know a lot of people think of Canada as this cold tundra, but our average winter temperatures are about 8 degrees Celsius, 46 Fahrenheit, if we have any Americans. And average summer temperatures are, mid 20s Celsius, so mid 70s Fahrenheit. Students are able to enjoy all different seasons with, beautifully mild summer months, leaves changing in the fall, and cherry blossoms that bloom in the spring. We're very similar temperature-wise to those large cities like Vancouver, Seattle. But we do get about 25% less rain than Seattle and 50% less rain than Vancouver. So
God, you're lucky, I tell you. It blows over you and hits us. I'm in Vancouver, and oh my goodness me, there's a lot of rain here. So it basically blows over and hits the mountains. Is that right?
Exactly. There's actually a mountain range that blocks us from a majority of the Vancouver rain.
Yeah. Lucky people. Who owns the university, actually? How is it organized in terms of ownership?
The University of Victoria is a public university, so we're managed and publicly funded by the British Columbia government. The post-secondary education system in Canada is incredibly well recognized and well funded, so the quality of a Canadian university degree is extremely high.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And okay, so let's take a look at, we've talked about the area, we've talked about the city. Let's look at the facilities of the university. As we mentioned, it's sort of on the edge of the city, and you have a huge and expansive park-like campus. Tell us a little bit more about that, please.
About the campus itself?
Yeah. Campus, facilities, and then we'll look into the teaching spaces, perhaps.
Yeah, so as a medium-sized university, we have all the facilities of a large university, like laboratories and lecture halls and visual arts studios and research centers with cutting-edge projects. You'll find like a bone lab in the anthropology department. We have 3D printing labs in engineering. There's all kinds of state-of-the-art facilities. And being that medium-sized university, it can be a little bit easier to get into those facilities. You're not competing with as many students.
Right.
And of course, along with the academic buildings, there's also spaces for students to socialize, like on-campus housing, libraries, a movie theater, a campus pub, a pharmacy, dental office, multiple food outlets all sprinkled across the campus.
Okay.
As well as obviously.
And what about
athletics.
teaching spaces? Let's take a quick look at them. Mainly traditional sort of lecture style spaces, or a mixture?
I would say a mixture. So a lot of our courses have a lecture component, which are taught
Sure.
in a traditional lecture hall. But there's also a lot of tutorial and laboratory components. So a tutorial might be 20 to 25 students where you have discussions, and a laboratory would actually be in a lab space where you're conducting experiments or, diving a little bit deeper into the course material.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that later, a little bit more detail. What about your staff? Where do they come from? Are they mainly Canadian? As an undergraduate student, who are you likely to be in contact with?
Yeah, our faculty members are incredible. They're all world-renowned researchers from all over the world, not just Canada. Obviously, Victoria being such a desirable place to live, it draws faculty members from all over the world. I never had a professor at U Vic that I didn't like. They're also very approachable. So I like to talk about, professors being eager to connect with students and engage them in their research. They have office hours each week that are dedicated to meeting with students to answer questions, talk about lecture material, and they even can share their expertise and give you tips on how to get involved in research and how to take that next step in academia.
Fantastic. And many of the people listening to this spend an awful lot of time on ranking sites, whether it's mums and dads or whether it's students in grade 11 or grade 12. Ranking sites are pretty important to them. And we've done loads of episodes around relativizing the importance of ranking sites, and sometimes they're a useful guide. How does the university fare in terms of rankings and those kind of things?
Yeah, so I briefly mentioned earlier that U Vic is ranked the #2 university in the world for climate action.
Isn't that wonderful?
That's a huge reflection.
That's brilliant from my perspective. Fantastic.
Yeah, we care about people and the planet. We are also ranked the #1 comprehensive university in Canada for preparing career-ready students.
Right.
So we really prioritize that real-world hands-on learning from research, field studies, work experiences. These are really going to help students build up their resume to make them employable and help them jump right into that dream job.
Sure. So let's zoom in on the academics right now. Could you give us a quick overview of all the courses that the university offers? I guess it's a broad spectrum.
We offer more than 100 undergraduate program options,
Wow.
And our faculties are very diverse. Students will have, hundreds and hundreds of courses to choose from in many different areas. We actually list all of our courses in our undergraduate calendar. So if we have any curious listeners, you can go online and take a look at all of the different things, whether it's exercise science. We have a course dedicated to the science of Batman, like how Batman would function. A course about vampires and Slavic studies.
One for me.
Keep it interesting.
Sure, and of course all the regular ones you'd expect from a university that focuses on the academics. I think that broad spectrum is incredibly powerful, isn't it? And what courses are most popular with international students?
I think a lot of international students are most commonly inquiring about programs that they think will get them a career, like economics, business, engineering. And all of these are great options, nothing but good things to say. But I also find that many students come in to U Vic and then they discover that we have all of these other options to explore. And they often end up changing their mind as they find another program that's well suited to their interests and goals. So I encourage students in their first year to try all kinds of courses that might pique your interest. Try a course in history or sociology, ocean sciences. I think the beauty of university is trying new things and figuring out who you are and what your future might look like.
Right. And I think it's great advice because, as you said, international students tend to take a safe option when it comes to these kind of things, but often a niche is actually more powerful in the end going forwards for your career than following the same route that everyone else does. Are there any flagship courses at your university that you're particularly proud of?
I don't know about flagship courses, but we are really well known for courses related to the environment and sustainability. Right. So ocean sciences, earth sciences, marine biology, I would say are quite well recognized internationally.
Right. Sure. And that fits with the ethos of the university, I guess, in terms
Exactly.
of being sustainable and all of that. What qualifications do students end up with when they graduate from you?
Yeah, we offer a wide variety of undergraduate and graduate degrees. So typically 4-year undergraduate degrees. Some examples are like a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Engineering, or you can do a Master of Arts, Master of Science. And the length of those degrees are, like I said, typically 4 years for undergrad, and it can vary for graduate.
Right. And that you mentioned being, preparing students for the workplace. Does that 4 years include internships usually, or how does that work?
So we actually have one of the largest cooperative education programs in Canada. So
Right.
That's how students can incorporate those paid work experiences into their studies. They would alternate their study terms with work terms in jobs related to what they're studying, or maybe to a career that they want to do after they graduate. That can extend the degree, so it might end up being 4.5 or 5 years. But for me personally, I did co-op as a U Vic student, and it completely transformed my career trajectory. I came to university having no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and sampling work experiences was how I figured it out. I learned what I like in a job, but also what I don't want to do for work. I learned that I don't want to work at a music festival ever again. So that might be even more helpful. And then you're also earning money while you're doing it. You're building up your resume. So you have that real experience to talk about when you're interviewing with future employers post-graduation.
Right. So let's drill into co-op programs because they're called different things in different places. And for many families, it's a little bit confusing how these things are set up and what they're doing. So normally, in what space, in what place do the co-op students go off and join a company, and how do they organize that and manage it? Is it first year students, or is it throughout the whole course, or how does it work?
Yeah, so we have a whole team dedicated to cooperative education. So they'll have a designated co-op coordinator that helps them learn about what co-op means and how that process works. They take a workplace preparation course in their first year, typically, to learn about writing resumes and cover letters and interviewing. And typically the actual co-op program would start in the second year. They're applying for jobs starting in their second year. And these are job postings that we have centralized to us. So we have partnerships with hundreds of employers in Victoria, Vancouver, all over the world. I have a friend who worked in Tokyo for her co-op, another friend in Germany, in the US, in the Silicon Valley. You can work all over. And we partner with those employers, and you go through the process as a co-op student. So you're not competing with other employees in the real working world.
Understood. And that's a database that's organised by you, and the students can then access that and get advice around those options. So relatively easy for the students to access, I guess.
Absolutely. And we highly encourage it. I think it's something like 56% of our students do co-op, and it's only continuing to grow. I love to promote it. I think it's hugely valuable. So very easy to get involved.
Right. And in terms of payment, are these options paid, or are they unpaid internships?
They're always paid. We don't do any unpaid labor
No
with
way.
U Vic. So you'll always earn a salary. The average co-op salary is about $3,000 per month, or $50,000 if you do the full program. So
Right.
it also helps pay for the degree.
Yes, indeed. And we'll be getting back to that later, but it certainly could make a difference, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
For a student. Honours programs are offered as well?
Yep, we have honors. Typically, those begin in third or fourth year of the degree.
Right. Okay. And many times students will be coming from schools that have very specific teaching style, and teaching style is really important. You mentioned it a bit earlier about finding the right fit. Could you sort of paint us a picture of the kind of teaching style that students, generally, and I understand that it's different from course to course, but generally would come across? Is it problem-based learning, or is it more lecture-based? How does that work?
I mean, at U Vic, we really prioritize hands-on learning,
Right.
which I think can look different depending on what you're studying. As an engineering student, you'll get into the laboratory and conduct experiments or work with your hands or test software. Or as an environmental studies student, you might take a field course that has you collecting plant samples or using drone mapping technology. As a history student, I got to have a lot of discussion-based learning, so lots of seminars as well as lectures, but it's a pretty good balance of you spend some time in a lecture, but you also get to have those conversations. And there's even, field schools in history where we have the Eyewitness Holocaust Field School, which takes a group of students across Central and Eastern Europe to explore how the Holocaust is memorialized. So really getting that real world learning experience in another part of the world too.
Okay, understood. Sounds really exciting. So some of the time you'd be in traditional lectures. Some of the time you'd be in small group discussions, and obviously depending on the area that you're studying, if it was a technical area, you'd be hands-on in that regard. Assessment is another area that is particularly of interest to students coming in. Some universities stress exams and examinations as pretty much the only tool for assessing achievement. How does University of Victoria approach assessment?
It does also vary by program, but it's
Right.
not purely exams, I would say, in any case. There's often assignments throughout the year, midterm assignments, as well as final assignments. Some programs are going to have final exams. Some programs aren't. It really depends on your area of study.
Right. And students who perhaps are struggling first year, it's often a huge transition, and sometimes kids can struggle. How does it work if you aren't getting the grades that you should be getting? How does that process work?
There's lots of support. So academic advisors are usually the first step. So talking to an advisor to discuss the issues you're having. Is it the program's not a good fit? Is it you need extra support? We have the Center for Accessible Learning, which offers different accommodations for anybody with learning barriers. And then we also have learning strategists who students can work with if they are really struggling, that might help with study solutions or essay writing or whatever the issues might be.
Okay, and we'll drill into that a little bit later, I think, because it's such a critical issue, isn't it? Student well-being and student support. Mm-hmm. Let's take a little bit about a look at the kind of candidates that you are looking for. You mentioned the right fit, but it's important for students to understand what you're looking for to find out whether they are the right fit, I guess. So what are the attributes of a successful applicant?
Again, it does vary, right? So a
Sure.
successful applicant to kinesiology may look very different than a successful applicant to humanities or music. So my recommendation is to check our website for our requirements, uvic.ca/undergraduate. That's where we list the courses you need, the steps you might need to take. The music program requires an audition. We want to make sure you can actually play the tuba before you come and play the tuba.
Yeah,
So
sure.
check the website to be sure you are meeting all of the qualifications that you need for your desired faculty or program of interest.
Right. But obviously you're looking for people who are interested in making a difference, I guess.
Yeah, socially conscious, people that care about people, places, the planet, all of those features as well.
And do you have any sort of, I don't know, former students who would act as a role model for that kind of approach or attitude that come to mind?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone in particular, but what I would say is I think all of our students are a reflection of the
Maybe
quality
you
of
are.
the degree. Maybe I'm the
Maybe
role
you
model.
are a great role model because as alumni pursuing your dreams, it's a
Yeah.
it's a pretty strong picture. Good. Academic requirements are really important as well. Again, I know that that varies from program to program and background to background. But what are the minimum requirements that high school students coming from abroad need to meet?
So they do vary by country. So country, the curriculum they're on, whether are they an IB student, are they a student studying the regular curriculum, what faculty are they applying to? There's not really a general minimum. It's specific to a faculty or program. So again, uvic.ca/undergraduate. Go and take a look at the website. We detail it all online.
Right, but you would certainly, for an IB student, you would, I guess, need 24 points. You'd need to get your diploma as a requirement, and of course, as a foreign student, you may well be asked to prove your English language ability level. Is that right?
Yes, we do have an English language proficiency requirement. There's a whole list of ways that you can meet it.
Yeah, indeed.
Whether it's a certain number of years of academic study, or it's with a certain grade in IB English, or it's with like an IELTS or a TOEFL examination. So
indeed, but that's
online,
certainly a requirement, I guess, for you.
yes.
And when you're looking at things, are there any particular things that you value highly in terms of academic requirements? Is there any sort of specific area that is particularly important?
I mean, grades are going to be very important. I would say the majority of our programs are emphasizing the transcript as the basis of admission. And then some programs also have additional requirements like a resume, a personal statement, an audition. But
the basic message is get great grades and then you'll buy yourself lots of choices. Is that right? Yeah, exactly. I think so. And that's one that we keep on talking about. In the end, regardless of everything else, you need to make sure your grades are high enough so you can access the broadest choice of courses and find your best future. So we mentioned a little bit about the kind of support services that University of Victoria offers students. Let's drill into that, though, a little bit now. Let's kick off with academic support. You mentioned a few of the strategies, but tell us how that really works to support students on their journey.
So academic advisors, like I mentioned earlier, are the folks who can help students choose courses, declare their major, make sure they're on the right path academically. They're that first point of contact. But there is a lot of additional support. The Learning Commons is a facility in our library that has our Center for Academic Communication to help with writing and speaking and all forms of communicating. They also offer tutoring in subjects like math and statistics and physics. So I encourage them to connect with those supports to if they are struggling, and connect with the professors. Like I mentioned earlier, they're good.
And those support services are all included in being a student at the university, or are they additional add-ons that you have to pay for?
Those are all included. The ones that I've mentioned, advising, the learning commons, your professor support, absolutely included.
And I guess the core message is if a student is struggling, they should reach out for support early. Is that right?
Absolutely. Definitely reach out if you are struggling. I think sometimes the difference between high school and university is that you're getting a little bit less hand-holding. You have to take the initiative to access the support. It's there, but you do have to kind of seek it out a little bit more. So take that step. I know it can be scary, but reach out to your advisors. They are really happy to help.
Yeah, and that's really, really important because, that change, especially in the first and second, even to the third semester, is significant, isn't it? And that a lot of things come together. It's often academic expectations. It's often to do with, looking after yourself. There's no mum or dad or family looking after you, and it's also there are loneliness issues and issues to do with separation there. How do you help students in that regard, with emotional or social issues?
Mental health is absolutely a top priority at U Vic. We have a student wellness center that houses counseling services, which students can access if they need that kind of mental health support. We also offer a Support Connect 24/7 program that has on-demand counseling supports at all hours of the day. So if there is a real crisis happening, there's a number to call and a person to talk to get that support as well.
Yeah, and it's so important. And again, I think the key message is, though, all of these services are there, but you need to actually remember to access them. Because, when you're feeling down and fed up and depressed, often, you don't feel like communicating, but it's really important to do that. And to understand that it's relatively normal, I think, especially for international students, to go through difficult phases when they move from home to another context. What about physical issues, mobility issues? How well set up are you there?
We absolutely strive to keep U Vic accessible for all levels of mobility. We provide services and physical environments that are usable and accessible to people with a wide range of abilities. And we're also happy to respond to accessibility needs. If students have anything that isn't quite meeting their standards, we are very open to having those conversations as well.
Right, but getting around, would wheelchairs have general access, for example?
Yes, definitely. So wheelchair accessible for sure.
Right. And that sort of leads me into the next area, the health services offered on the campus. And everyone needs some level of health care and health support. What do you offer students?
So that student wellness center that I mentioned that houses counseling services also provides a wide array of health services. Doctors and nurses are on campus and available for appointments. They can diagnose and connect students with local specialists or write prescriptions. I have type 1 diabetes, so I accessed all of those health services as a student, and They connected me with a local endocrinologist who is phenomenal. So a great resource for all sorts of health services that you might need.
Okay, so that's your starting point. If you're not well for whatever reason, or you have a condition that needs to be managed, you need to make connections there. How easy is it to get an appointment?
It's very easy. So You can call, you can drop in, you can have recurring appointments if that's something that you need. It's actually a brand new facility. It was a big initiative for us to combine counseling and health services.
It sounds wonderful. It's a great idea.
Yeah, so there's no stigma. You could be there for a prescription. You could be there to talk to a psychiatrist. There's no distinguishing between mental health and physical health. It's all health.
Yeah, that sounds really wonderful and incredibly important, in my opinion. Many of our students who are listening and families listening come from different faith backgrounds to, the traditional picture here in Canada. I know that Victoria is a relatively diverse city, but how are different faith groups supported in your university?
We have a multi-faith center that provides religious services and a space for students to really focus on their spiritual health. There's 10 or 12 different faith communities that are part of the multi-faith center with leaders from each of those faiths. So examples like Buddhism and Judaism and Christianity, Islam, it really is an inclusive community of spirituality.
Wonderful. And so taking Islam, for example, there would be an imam who would be there on a regular basis to support students.
Exactly.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. And faith's important, sport's important as well. And we're talking just as Canada is playing in the World Cup in soccer right now, I believe, against Belgium. So let's talk a little bit about sport. Really important in Canadian universities. Tell us about the programs, the facilities for people who are really interested in sport, but also people like me who just enjoy being physically active.
Yeah, there's all levels reflected. So you can try out for a varsity athletics team in one of 8 sports if you want to compete at the national level, and rugby or rowing or swimming, soccer, or if you're more like me and the thought of embarrassing yourself on a court or a field is not your
that's more me.
Exactly, you can do it recreationally as well. There's an intramural teams, volleyball, soccer, dodgeball, softball, you name it, probably exists, as well as clubs. We have a surf club, a rock climbing club, a tennis club. So you can connect with students who have these sports hobbies in common. And then there's also the traditional health and wellness facilities based out of our gym. It's called the Center for Athletics, Recreation, and Special Abilities. And that houses the full fitness and weight center, climbing wall, different fields and courts, spin classes, yoga classes, anything that you might need to stay active.
And are they easily accessible, like a yoga club or the gym? How easy or difficult is it to access those facilities?
Very accessible, so open to all students. There are different levels of membership at the gym. So you can get a base level membership, or you can level up and pay more to do spin classes weekly or access the climbing wall or those kinds of things.
Okay. And that's something that you can, so the base membership is included in the fees, is it? Yeah. And then if you want to access additional services on top, you can top up. Is that right?
Exactly right.
Yeah, great. Okay. I have an art background, and I love theatre, and I love everything creative. Sport, fine. Tell us about the facilities and the support that you offer for people in the more artistic realm.
Yeah, I think something that's a little bit unique about us too is we have a standalone Faculty of Fine Arts. So an entire section of our campus is dedicated to arts and performance facilities. So the visual arts department has painting and sculpting studios with facilities like a dark room for photography. The theater department houses 3 performance stages. So they have the full costume department, set design, so students can actually, put their skills into practice either with coursework, or you can often try out for their productions, even if you're a science student. So the fine arts are also incredibly well connected to the local arts community too.
And they're accessible to students who aren't necessarily studying that specific area. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So you can take a one-off visual arts course if you want, or you can try out for the musical theater production that's happening, even if you're not registered as a theater major.
Okay, great. That's wonderful. Now, again, some of our families listening will think about North America, and they'll think about fraternities and sororities. You see all these movies on Netflix with these stories. we know that mainly this is a storyline for the USA, but they're also present in Canada. How is this in Victoria?
We have a couple sororities and fraternities, not many, to be quite honest, and they're not affiliated directly with the university. They're sort of off branches of American streams of those offerings that exist, but not much that I can mention because we're not
Right. Okay. So for parents, it's not a significant subject here,
Definitely not.
especially not in Victoria. Let's move on to having a good time. Students studying is one thing. Having a good time is also part of student life. Going out, obviously, Canada has an alcohol age of 19. For Europeans, that's a bit of a shock, I know, coming over. Tell us how people enjoy themselves in the evening.
Well, Victoria is a lively destination with lots of great food, like I mentioned. So we actually have some of the most restaurants per capita in Canada. So that's one of my favorite things to do on a weekend, go and try a new restaurant. Also lots of music and cultural festivals, concerts, comedy shows. I was a big fan of trivia nights and music bingo and the board game cafe as a student. I think Victoria is that perfect size. We have about 370,000 people. So the advantages of city life, but still the charm and friendliness and maybe lighter traffic of a smaller community.
And I think you're so right. It's an incredibly powerful mixture, isn't it? Especially for a student coming in, maybe hasn't got a connect to Canada. It feels friendly, and you can really get to know the city relatively quickly. And at the same time, it offers a wide diversity of choice and options. Certainly, I'm a fan of Victoria because of that, really, because of the fact that you don't feel isolated and alone as you may do in a big city like New York or London or even Seattle. And that's a really powerful thing. You mentioned the importance of co-op earlier. And I guess that sort of spins on into the importance of your alumni network. Is that right?
We have a very active alumni network that host events domestically and internationally. I believe we actually just had a session in London, England this fall, so students can stay connected with U Vic even post-graduation.
Right. And if we spin then from the end to the beginning, one of the most important parts for high school students who's graduating and coming is that whole arriving, settling in, whatever you call it in your location, the process of becoming assimilated into the family of your university. Tell us about that, how you organize it, how students, when they arrive, how they're treated, and the kind of things that they can expect.
Well, we have an entire team or department at U Vic dedicated to new student transitions. So they coordinate multiple programs throughout the year. Like New Student Welcome is our big first event of the year where everyone joins people from their faculty to get to know U Vic, get to know their facilities. There's a big residence move-in day when everybody moves in and has a residence orientation and meets the people that they're living with. So lots of events taking place associated with that, as well as a campus kickoff, which is a week of activities like clubs and course union days where you can join, different clubs. They have like the yoga rave, which is a yoga class of about 500 people that do yoga and also have a DJ blasting electronic music. All of these events to hopefully help you meet people that are also new to the campus.
Okay. So, but if you turn up, say, the classic picture, international student, maybe it's someone coming in, let's imagine from the Middle East or from India or wherever, with mum or with dad or with both, perhaps, or even on their own. When they arrive at the airport, do you offer sort of services to pick up, or how do they find their way to you? Is that independent, or how does that work?
It would be independent. Unfortunately, we don't have like an airport greeter service, but the nice thing about Victoria is it is a pretty accessible city. It's not like a huge journey to get from the airport to the campus, so hopefully shouldn't be too difficult.
Right. Okay. So, and for families who arrive as well, is there accommodation for them, or do they need to book into hotels or to Airbnbs around the area in order to be close by?
So we don't do visitor accommodation just because we prioritize all of our on-campus spaces for current students.
Sure.
But Victoria is a bit of a tourist hub, so lots of hotels in the area. I recommend staying downtown so you get to eat all the good food and see all the sights, and then you can bus into campus in 20 minutes or drive if you have a rental car in 10, 15 minutes.
So let's move on to the really important stuff, where I'm going to spend my time, where I can sleep, and what I get to eat. Let's focus in on accommodation first. What kind of accommodation can a first-year student expect?
We have a few different types of on-campus housing options. Dormitories are predominantly for first-year students, and we're primarily a single dorm campus. So about 80% of our dorms you'd have your own room. There are a few buildings with doubles if you really want to have a roommate. The dormitories also include a meal plan, so it makes eating on campus very seamless. All of your breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks are included in the cost of your housing. There is some upper year housing as well for students in their second, third, fourth year, which are apartment style housing.
Okay. And so as a first year student coming in, you can pretty much be guaranteed accommodation?
So we have a first-year residence guarantee currently for fall 2023. For students that come right out of high school, you're guaranteed a spot to live on campus.
That's fantastic. And let's so you mentioned that you can generally have a room of your own. Is that on a corridor sort of setup, or is that in an apartment kind of setup? How does that work generally?
So we actually have a few different types of buildings, more than a few, because they're all built at different times. So some of our older buildings were built in, the 60s. So they're a little bit, structured that way, but the rooms are bigger. So that's the advantage of an older
much bigger. And as somebody who's, visited these things, the older buildings offer more space, don't they?
Yeah, I highly recommend an older building. If you'd rather have a bigger room, it's worth it.
Exactly.
And then the newer buildings are, going to be taller. They're like bigger apartment style, but a little more compact in the space.
Indeed. And often the walls are less solid as well, which means the older buildings are generally out of concrete and allow a little bit more privacy generally. Right. So the range of accommodation there, that's great. Is it gender separated, or how does that work?
It is also dependent on the year of the building. So the older buildings tend to be separated by gender, so either by wing or by floor, where the newer buildings are non-gendered. So you have your own room and the washrooms are single user, meaning there's only one person in the washroom at a time. So your neighbor may be female, maybe male, maybe non-binary. So we don't gender in the newer style.
Right. But if a family is concerned about that, they would be able to access accommodation of a variety of different types.
Exactly.
Okay, that's great. Good. And security, I'm guessing the university is a secure place. Victoria doesn't strike me as a high crime area particularly, and I guess the university isn't either. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. The residence community and the whole U Vic community is exceptionally safe. We have a designated team of resident staff that maintain the safety and community of the living standards. So, for example, community leaders are the student staff members that live alongside you in residence that make sure that everybody is following the rules and maintaining a respectful living environment. And then they also help you meet people at the same time. But myself, I lived in residence and I always felt really safe living on campus and being on campus. It's a nice community that's sort of separate from any like downtown core. So you're not going to see a lot of people on campus that aren't U Vic students or connected to the campus.
Yeah, that's really important. I think it makes a big difference to a campus that's dead in the city centre where others are moving through. It's that distance does provide a level of emotional and physical security, I believe.
Agreed.
The accommodation, how much does it cost roughly? I know it varies from building to building and the age of the building, but could you give us a picture?
So estimated, again, this is for fall 2023. So if we have
Sure.
listeners in the future, it could change. We estimate around the $12,000 mark, Canadian dollars, for the first year of housing in a dorm. So that's a single dorm. That's including your meal plan as well as your living.
Okay, that's the meal plan and the living. And is
Yeah.
that for a period of time from, say, September to when?
September to April.
And I think that's important for international students because depending on where you go, the university year is longer or shorter. And Canada does finish very early, in fact, generally,
Yeah.
to give students more time in the summer. And that brings pluses and minuses there. We'll maybe get to that a bit later. So let's talk about the meal plan then, the most important bit for me anyway. So it's included in the package. What does it include?
Includes all of your meals, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, beverages. How it works is you pay your, say, $12,000, and a set amount of that is loaded onto your student card that you use to purchase all of your meals at all of our residence dining outlets. So we have multiple outlets for meals, whether it's a salad bar or the stir fry station or the meal of the night, and you can pick what you want to eat and you use your card to purchase that. Generally, that's, the amount that's loaded on there is enough for every student to last from September to April. But in the event that you used up a lot of your funds really quickly, you can add additional funds to your student card as well to purchase.
Okay, so let me understand that. So you can use the card. Do you have like canteens, traditional sort of university canteen style, or is it third-party outlets? How does that work?
They're traditional, like cafeteria style. So most of it is in-house. We have a couple of chains like Starbucks on campus that you could use it at, but we recommend that you eat in the residence dining hall because you're getting a discount there. It's more affordable than eating, out of Starbucks every day because it can get a little pricier there.
But you can use the card theoretically in a couple of other locations as well.
Yeah, we have spaces sprinkled all across campus. So if you're having class on the other side of campus and you want to grab soup or a sandwich, absolutely, you can use your card for that.
Okay, understood. But you say generally the amount covers the requirements for most students. Is that right? Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, great. So first-year students live on campus. I guess the process of applying, if you're guaranteed a spot, is relatively easy. Are there any, is it important to apply early?
The benefit of applying for residence early is you're more likely to get your first choice room.
Yes, indeed.
So there is variety, like I said, in building type and washroom style and room size. So the earlier you apply, it might be more likely that you get that preference.
Right, and that's sort of an important message, pretty much universally. If you want a specific type of accommodation, you do need to get in there and fill out the forms in time. Is that an easy process?
Yeah, it's a smooth process. It is separate from applying to the university. So just keep that in mind. You'll apply to the university and then you'll also apply for housing at a later date. It's an online application. You'll select your top 3 preferences in terms of room type. And then there's like a $50 application fee to apply.
Okay, right. Okay. And going back to food for a moment, many people have a variety of different dietary requirements, either faith-based or for whatever health-based reason. How well are they accommodated?
So plant-based options are available at all meals and all food locations. We also have a dedicated plant-based eatery in the residence dining hall that offers vegan and vegetarian options, which are also prepared away from like non-halal meats, for example. So we are mindful of like the faith-related food restrictions that students might have. So
now we get to the difficult stuff. Money In the end, all of this has to be paid for. Could you help us understand, first of all, the tuition fees, and how much students can expect to pay?
So the tuition rates do vary by area of study. So the best way to estimate your exact tuition fees is using our tuition fee estimator. So we have a resource on our website where you can go in and let us know what you want to study, if you're a Canadian citizen or not, or permanent resident, and then we'll give you an estimate of what those numbers might look like. It is significantly more expensive to be an international student compared to a domestic Canadian student. So definitely looking to distinguish between the two.
It's really important to say that. I think in Canada, it's perhaps a little less clear for families to work out tuition cost, because it's on a credit-based system, isn't it? And, in the UK, you pay X and you get the year. And so it's much easier. But in Canada, it really depends on the number of credits you're taking. And that credit load can change, can't it, over the 4 years?
Exactly. You're paying on a course by course basis. So if you're taking less courses, you're paying less money that term. So it's not quite as easy to articulate.
And so it really is important to take a look at the calculator and really try and work out how much it's going to cost. Sometimes, depending on the course, you can be spending a lot up front, first 2 years, and then the course load may drop off as well, or the other way around. So that course calculator is really important. And the other thing to say is, for Canadians, the courses are much more accessible financially than for international students. And that difference varies, doesn't it, from course to course?
Yeah, different programs have different values of what you would pay for each course. So, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's important, generally to understand humanities courses are generally cheaper for credit charges, and obviously if you want to be engineering or one of those highly specialised areas, they're inevitably more expensive per credit. So
for us, engineering and business tend to be more.
They're always the ones, and business traditionally for international students is probably the one that has the biggest price differential between local students and international students. And I guess that's the case in University of Victoria too.
Yes.
Okay. So we've talked about the cost of living and food. We've talked about tuition fees. Are there any other costs that parents need to be aware of, or families need to be aware of, that are sort of there that need to be met?
So budgeting for textbooks and supplies is definitely something to think about too. So we estimate budgeting around $2,000 per year for textbooks. So keep that in mind. You can buy them used and you can find other ways to save money. That's something I think people sometimes forget. The student fees are all wrapped into the tuition fee estimator. So you'll see the cost of the bus pass included in there, the cost of being in the student society, all of that is included. And
that's a really important thing to say, isn't it, as well? Because sometimes the number appears to be enormous in the calculators. And I know as a dad, I remember looking at it and going, oh my goodness me. But actually, when you actually look through the detail, it's less scary than perhaps otherwise. Health insurance, healthcare provision is also really, really important. Could you tell us about how that works in BC?
So international students are required to enroll in temporary medical insurance, followed by British Columbia's Medical Services Plan, the MSP. So currently, as of 2022, U Vic is offering a plan called Guard Me. So that provides the temporary emergency medical insurance for international students when they're new to U Vic. And then this is covering your insurance while you're in a waiting period. So after you've applied for the MSP, you typically have to wait 3 to 4 months for it to come into effect. And then once it's in effect, you're covered by our provincial healthcare plan that allows you to visit doctors and nurses and those kinds of facilities.
Yeah, and thank you for making that really clear, Megan, because Canada is unusual in this regard, in that you really, when you arrive, you do need to have a temporary coverage period while you wait for being accepted into the normal plan, and that's unusual. And many families, are confused by that. So thank you for making that clear. Let's move on to the other side. So we talked about the painful bit, how much it's going to cost, and all the rest of it. But let's try and move to the more positive side. First of all, starting off with financial aid and scholarships. Is there financial aid available for international students?
There is scholarship funding available to international high school students. It is limited and competitive. We offer their entrance scholarships for academically outstanding high school students who have either recently graduated or graduated within 2 years. And then once admitted, all students, regardless of citizenship, would qualify for in-course scholarships, which are based on the academic performance in your first year at U Vic. So those are some options for scholarships. There's also work study, which is based on financial need. We would approve you for a certain number of hours that you can work on campus to do different jobs. And then our co-op program, which I talked about earlier, allows you to earn money as part of your studies as well.
Yeah, and that's really powerful. I think, I think it's fair to say that the scholarship options, while they exist, are relatively limited, certainly compared with the US, where it's almost part of the normal process of achieving a place. And families probably shouldn't plan on scholarships for U Vic. Is that right?
Yeah, you definitely can't bank on it. There's a limited number of them that go out to like the top students. And even those don't pay for the entire degree. We don't do full ride scholarships. So
exactly. And when you say top, you really do mean top. You have to be pretty exceptional, I guess, to gain that kind of level of scholarship. So let's focus in on the other stuff. For IB students and students with AP, perhaps, Canadian universities are generally quite generous around giving support there. Could you describe how U Vic approaches that?
So we offer transfer credit for IB and advanced placement courses on a course-by-course basis. Usually they need a minimum score of 4 or 5, depending on the course, to get credit. Typically, students that excel at the IB Diploma can get a full year's worth of transfer credit. So we are quite generous with what we're able to offer. And as a student, that transfer credit can allow you to take a lighter course load in your first year and spend less money on your tuition throughout the duration of your degree, because you're coming in with potentially your whole first year already completed.
Yeah, and it's incredibly important, and many families don't know this, they don't realize this at all. It's one of those sort of hidden facts that even people in my world really don't know. But basically, if you're coming in with relatively good, but not unbelievably good, relatively good IB scores, you can realistically plan on nearly a year's worth of credits being allocated, which has the benefit, as you mentioned, of financial, but also allowing you the space and the time to do things differently, to spread your courses perhaps over a wider period of time. So really, really important. Canada's very generous in that regard, I think. You mentioned, of course, the co-op, and that's also a really important option, isn't it? Because you can collect up a fair amount of cash, I guess, as a co-op student, depending on where you work and where you go. And in terms of other ways of earning money, is it possible for students to work, international students to work in Canada when they're on a study visa?
Yeah, absolutely. So the study permit in Canada allows students to work a certain number of hours. So confirm with your study permit how many hours per week, but you are able to work on and off campus. There are quite literally hundreds of job opportunities, whether you're on campus working in the bookstore or the library or in food services, or if you want to work at a cafe or a restaurant or a shop in the city of Victoria, it's very common that international students will access that.
Yeah, and it's again, compared with the US, for example, it's much easier to work in Canada, and financially, it's actually a pretty good option because you can often earn quite a lot of cash doing one of those jobs. So when families are looking at the total cost of study, and maybe they're coming from families where they don't have unlimited funds, these are all really, really important parts of the equation, aren't they, Meghan?
Definitely. And Canada is in a bit of a labor shortage right now. So there's lots of job opportunities that you can, find locally in all different parts of Canada.
So let's talk a little bit about visa-related issues. We've covered it in other podcast episodes, so we don't need to drill in too much. But for international students, any hints and tips around visas?
So the number one recommendation is to apply earlier rather than later. The processing times can vary depending on your country. So get your application in as soon as you can. Our applications typically open in the fall of your grade 12 year. So applying as soon as you can to hopefully get an earlier admission decision to get the ball rolling with the study permit process.
Right. And does the university offer support around, visas and supporting students getting the right documentation and those kind of things?
So prospective students are encouraged to contact Canadian Immigration directly. We are not certified to offer immigration advice.
Sure.
Once they're a registered student, we do have a center for international students that can help them with work visas and things like that in the future. But a prospective student definitely wants to get in touch directly with the Canadian government for support.
And it's a very clear process through the website, isn't it? I mean, I know that of course you're not the right person to give detailed advice, but the Canadian website is an incredibly simple and easy to access tool, and they're very used to dealing with students from all over coming into Canada, and it's a relatively simple way of going about things. Do international students need paperwork from your university in order to complete that application? Do you help them there?
Yep. So typically you would get an offer of admission to a Canadian university as part of the study permit application process. So once you have your offer of admission, you can work with us to get any documentation you need to submit as part of your study permit application.
Yeah, and that's the critical piece, isn't it? You can't apply without an offer, and that piece of paper comes from your admissions office, I guess.
Yeah, so the first step is apply to the university,
exactly.
Get your admission decision, and then get the ball rolling with the study permit.
And do all of that as early as you can do, because especially if you're coming from a location where it may be more difficult, more challenging to get a visa, you don't want to be left in the position where you're sitting in August and still waiting. Mm-hmm. What happens if you are still waiting for your visa and it hasn't come through? Can students just turn up anyway?
Absolutely not. Do not show up if you don't have your study permit. Typically, this would be handled on a case-by-case by our admissions office. In the past, I've seen international students request a change of entry point to a future term. So if you're not getting your study permit in time for September, you can reach out to admissions and potentially get an extension to start in January or a future term.
Right. And it really, as you said, case by case. Sometimes it's just a matter of a few days because the authorities are very aware of the timeline. And sometimes, a phone call will help that process. in certain locations. So I'm sure that there's a little bit of flexibility there from your side in terms of, but if it does go on, there is that ability to shift back. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. So, University of Victoria, what makes you special? What makes you stand out? Why should I come to you?
I think some of our rankings that we've covered actually nicely highlight the strengths of U Vic. So we've talked a lot about climate action. We truly care about the pressing issues facing our planet and our communities, and we're great at giving students opportunities to make a positive change, as well as in terms of preparing career-ready students. We give students the hands-on learning experiences that they might need to make themselves employable. Our co-op program, research, field schools, these are the opportunities that are going to help students kickstart their career journey. And lastly, something that may not be as easily defined by rankings, I think it's important to highlight that U Vic has an exceptionally tight-knit community. As that destination university, we're a place where students are wholeheartedly welcome to a new environment where they feel supported as they transition to university and where they can build lasting friendships and connections on campus.
And that's really important, isn't it? And I think, going forwards when you graduate, often those networks, those informal and or formal networks, and we've talked about alumni networks, but informal networks are incredibly important. For students moving on, what are the employment prospects for graduates from U Vic?
I mean, with 100 different programs, our grads tend to have careers in all sorts of different fields. Many are working in the engineering and technology sector. Others might be working in business and the private industry. We are in Victoria, the capital city of the province, so that brings a lot of government and public sector job offerings. But also many might hold positions in like the creative sphere, working in the arts, in publishing, communications, with nonprofits. The possibilities, I think, really are endless with a U Vic degree.
Fantastic. And for an international student, of course, Canada offers the ability to stay on after graduation. And that's a particularly powerful mix, isn't it, for international students, because many locations will allow you to study, spend your money there, but only a few will allow you actually to invest in that community after you've graduated. And so for international students, those offers, those offerings, those choices are available as well, I guess.
Yep. So like the post-graduation work permit is a great option for international students who want to stay, and then potentially even applying for permanent residency down the line. I have friends that have gone through the permanent residency process after graduating from U Vic, so I think it's pretty common.
Yeah, it is, and it's a very, very powerful mixture for families who maybe are considering another option for their families to actually consider after studying going on that journey to becoming Canadian. And Canada allows that process in a very transparent and open way, and that's really powerful. You've convinced me, Meghan. I want to come. I want to join you. I love the idea of the university. I love the idea of Canada. How do I maximize my chances of being accepted into University of Victoria?
I think the best advice to prospective students looking to maximize their odds is to reference the specific requirements on our website, uvic.ca/undergraduate, for the individual faculty or program that you are considering. You want to ensure you're taking the right courses, you have the grades that you need, and that you maybe have the experiences that you might need for a specific program that they're looking to see.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. So it's the mixture between getting great, making sure you're studying the right courses, really important. And that happens in grade 10. And again, in our podcast, we talk a lot about that. But also obviously getting the grades and, students often through grade 11, it's also confusing. You've got grades, you've got applications, grade 12. Really focus on getting those grades because they will make the difference.
Absolutely.
And then it's also, the other stuff, isn't it? And for many courses, especially competitive courses that the additional extras are really important as well, aren't they, in the admissions process?
Yeah, exactly. Some programs really prioritize that additional personal statement or resume or whatnot.
Yeah, and so really take a look at the requirements course by course. I think Canada is unusual in that applications are managed directly through the university, certainly in BC, rather than through like the Common App or through UCAS or whatever in different locations. So you can actually focus your application around the specific university and indeed the specific faculty in a way that perhaps in other locations you can't. Are there any costs of application, application fees?
There is an application fee, so that will be paid at the end of submitting the online application. There is a difference between like a domestic student and an international student rate, so just pay attention to that. Even if you, for example, are a Canadian citizen studying abroad, if you have transcripts coming from outside of Canada, you would be assessed an international tuition or international application fee.
Yeah, but not the tuition fee.
Not the tuition, exactly.
It's important to note that one. And we talked a little bit about documentation. It's, I guess, pretty clear on the website what's required.
Yeah, so generally we're looking at transcripts as well as proof of English language proficiency, and then we would let you know if there's supplemental documents you also need to submit along with those. Indeed,
and many families, especially maybe in the Indian subcontinent, China, are nervous and confused about whether they need to use agents on their behalf or whether a direct application is as powerful as using an agent. What's your position on all of that? Should students, are they required to use an agent or is a direct application just as good?
They're absolutely not required to use an agent. They're actually advised to submit their own application, but we do work with a select group of international agents in India and Southeast Asia, and they can use them if they find it helpful with understanding the process and having that support. But they should definitely make sure that the agent is directly partnered with us if that's something they're considering, and make sure that they're following the correct steps as well on their own.
But generally speaking, a direct application, there's no advantage for the student of applying through an agent. You're not going to get accepted quicker or with lower grades. Is that the case?
Yeah, definitely not. An agent is not going to give you any advantage when it comes to being admitted.
Well, that's great, Meghan. Thank you so much for your time. Parents, students who want more information, obviously the website is important. If they have extra questions, who should they contact?
We have a huge team of student recruiters available to help with any and all questions. Each student is assigned a recruiter based on where you've most recently studied. So you can find our contact information on the Contact Us tab of our website. Again, uvic.ca/undergraduate.
Right, fantastic. And the response rate is relatively quick?
Yes, our goal is to respond within 2 business days, so you're going to get a response very quick. Fantastic,
and that's really important, I know, for many families. Thank you so much. There's one last question that I have. If a student doesn't manage to get into University of Victoria, maybe it's because it's grades, or maybe it's because of another reason. Maybe they don't have the course, you don't have the course that they're looking for, or whatever. Can you recommend anyone else that perhaps shares the same sort of ethos and approach?
I mean, in terms of universities across British Columbia, there's tons of great options. So, University of British Columbia, Simon Fraser University are the other big 2 here in British Columbia. If for some reason you're not admissible to U Vic and you want to maybe do some coursework to get in. There's also local colleges. So in Victoria, we have Camosun College that offers kind of university transfer partnerships that are a good pathway. If you're not quite meeting the requirements and you want to come to U Vic, you can start at a local
That's
college.
an incredibly powerful tip as well, isn't it? Because there are lots of different ways of getting to a University of Victoria degree at the end, and that's a really top tip there, Meghan. So thank you so much. Going into a community college, access is generally easier. And then transfer within BC is relatively simple, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely transferring within the province of British Columbia. There's actually a resource called the BC Transfer Guide that shows how courses transfer between BC schools, universities, colleges. So you can kind of plan out your path starting at a college and transferring over to a university if that's the goal.
Yeah, and we've done an episode around that because for many of our families, again, it's a bit like the transfer credit issue. Many of our families don't understand that there are multiple ways that you can enter and then end up with the same thing at the end that you would have had if you'd gone in through the traditional route. So thank you for highlighting that. And thank you for your time today. It's been wonderful to meet you, Meghan. I've really enjoyed learning about the university and about you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great to meet you as well. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe and share the Find Your Best Future podcast.